So this is a podcast that me and Matt do called Bipolarcast, and we interview people that are bipolar who are doing ketogenic diets. Me and Matt are both bipolar ourselves and have had good results doing ketogenic diet. And so we're doing this to try and help other people learn about this, and there's not much information about it. So we met on Reddit, and so Blaze is doing this podcast with us because we've been chatting back and forwards online, and we were both probably spending way too much time on Reddit as usual. And I was coming across forum posts, and I saw some of Blaze his posts. And do you want to share like what some of those posts were like back then, when I first got in
Yeah.
touch, or?
So I was going through a rougher period of my life. At that time, along with being bipolar, I started to develop visual snow syndrome, was like a neurological visual disorder. And that's combined with just the regular mood swings of bipolar 2 just severely made my swings like bigger than usual. And then, of course, I was on Reddit, just like, reading. For the most part, most of the, posts are, very projecting when it comes to like negativity, and that's made the whole entire situation worse. And then you actually end up reaching out to me and telling about the keto diets. And that made me remember when I was around 16, 17, I did keto, I think for 6 months, and I lost a bunch of weight. I felt better than I had, in years. And I struggle a lot when it comes to like a binge eating disorder. I've had that since I was like 8, 9 years old, like longer than I've had bipolar for. And keto just completely removes that from me. And that's great, especially when it comes to saving money too. Like every time I'm dropping like, 70, 100 US dollars on takeout. And then it's so hard to save money that way. Like it would just be like barely
Yeah.
making it. So, just that alone makes it so
Yeah.
much work for me,
Because
regardless of the other benefits.
yeah, like so I remember I was going through the bipolar forums on Reddit, and yeah, it kind of stuck out to me what you said, because the thing that really bothered me about what you said was like you were like, oh man, I could see like you wanted to get better. You were like, like you wanted to feel good and like feel well. And you were saying there's just not enough like research happening around this. There's like people don't care, like nobody cares about our condition. And I was like, man, like I totally remember feeling like that, like 100%. Like it's so frustrating. Like if you have diabetes, you go to the doctor and they'll put you on a treatment program, and you get loads of support and time off work and like stuff like this. And if you have bipolar, like you're thrown a pack of pills and then just sent off into the races. It's like is so I totally relate to what you're saying about that. And how bad was like for you, like the depression and things like this? Was it
I mean, it was bad to the point to where like when you're in a moment, it feels like your thoughts are basically being controlled, but in a moment you don't realize that they're out of your control.
yeah,
That kind of it feels real,
yeah,
and it is real. And like, of course, one of the biggest advices that I've heard personally is like, oh, it goes away, it passes with time, and sort of thing. But when you're in the moment, especially when you don't have medications that work for you or no treatment plan, it feels very real, and it's kind of hard to get out of that hole and get out of that mindset until it passes.
So,
yeah,
Blaze, had you been on meds for a little while and not had as much success with that?
No, so bipolar started for me when I was like 17, 18, coming out of high school. Then I went to college for probably about a couple years. I was staying on a college. I actually ended up going to school. I was just, doing that and grinding YouTube and stuff. But at the time, I just noticed my energy starting to fluctuate a lot. And there were times where I'm sleeping like, 12 hours a day. And it wasn't necessarily depression yet, but just over years, it went from like, oh, I'm just tired today. I just want to lay down and sleep all day, watch Netflix, to where it just gets worse and worse and more intrusive. And then finally, when I was in Colombia, you know, for a couple months. That's when it got kind of bad. And that's when I first started trying my medications. And then I finally found some that somewhat works. I kind of just, I know I got bipolar from my mother's side. So I kind of took what she does. And there's been a study done so far with Harvard where he tested if lithium works between bloodlines from like parents, grandparents to grandchildren, children, and they found a lot of success with that. So I was like, okay, cool. So I always try whatever my mom takes, and turned out that whatever she takes works good for me. So I've been been on that for the last, I want to say 3 months. But when I was talking to is it Leon or Ian?
Ian,
or, Ian, yeah. When I was talking to Ian, I wasn't medicated at all. I was just raw dogging it.
It's it's funny because like you see so many posts on like the bipolar Reddit forums that are like you say, some of it is like kind of just negativity and things, and most of it is actually like people helping each other, which is awesome. But your ones were different to me because I was like, man, this guy really wants to get better. Like I can tell from what you're saying that like you're researching stuff and you actually want to understand the condition, and like you were talking about like different scientific studies and like how frustrating it is. There's just not enough stuff happening. And I'm a bipolar researcher, and I was like, this is the worst thing ever to me, like for someone to be going through terrible depression and also feeling like on top of that like nobody cares and nobody's even like trying to make this better. So I mean, so me and Matt both did keto ourselves, and I just discovered it by accident, like, and I had like a huge improvement after doing keto that I wasn't expecting, and it gave me my life back, and Matt's had a similar experience that we've talked about on the previous episodes, and so I was just saying, I sent some papers and like, here's what we're working on, and like maybe we're gonna understand more about bipolar in the coming years as we start to research this. And what did you think when I sent that stuff? Were you like, oh man, this guy's a quack? He's sending me some butter and bacon diet, or what did you think?
No, I mean, I thought it made sense because, going back to when I first did keto when I was like 16, I remember how it made me feel. Then also, going back to, my binge eating disorder as well. I mean, I think it definitely made sense. It was like something I'm willing to try. Then you told me about, the study at Harvard. Not Harvard, Stanford. Apologies, Stanford. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll apply for that because I wasn't gonna do keto regardless. Like it didn't even matter. I mean, you recommended it. You told me about the study and stuff. I was like, okay, cool. I'm just gonna try it regardless. So you recommended me to check out the Stanford study. So like, cool. I'll apply. I'll go for it. I'll do it. And then they actually getting back to me, and they were like, oh, well, we usually only take people that can come in and do like the study in person. And then they're like, well, we'll give a virtual study a try with you. So I'm the first person virtually to try and do a study with, and so far that's just kind of took off the whole train for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I was sort of just saying, here's the studies, like here's the evidence that this could be something. And it's amazing that this trial is happening at Stanford because it's such a prestigious university, and the people doing that are very prestigious scientists. And I mean, there's like 2 or 3 people that are really like driving this forward and pioneering it, which is Chris Palmer at Harvard and Shibani Sethi at Stanford. And Matt and his family are involved in the research groups of both these people, like enabling them to do the research they're doing and helping them to study this and understand more about it. So it's like there's really very few like teams that are looking at this, but there's this small group of like very, very like amazing researchers that are trying to understand about this. So the Stanford group are one, Harvard group's one, there's another in Australia now, and we're doing one in Edinburgh. And I kind of felt like it's not usual to like recommend people to like other people's studies or universities, but I was just like, this, you really need like to have this opportunity or ability, or people in general need to be able to try this. So I felt like I'm just gonna recommend this, and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But what happened when you joined the study? Did you posted an update on Reddit after a couple of weeks? Like, what was your experience of the first few weeks of the trial?
Oh man, it was remarkable. I mean, I probably had keto flu for one day.
Yeah.
You know, I went to the store, bought a little like light Powerade or Powerade Zero,
Yeah.
do some like salt in there and mix it up, and I was fine after
Yeah.
that. But yeah, just I noticed a difference straight away. One of the biggest issues for me is a consistency in energy,
Mhm.
not necessarily like the depression and the highs. It's always been about energy for me.
Mm.
So my goal going into it was less about the mood swings and more about, like I said, just being able to be consistent and getting up, and getting to work, you know, uploading video, or doing whatever else, and just being able to accomplish and start being a normal member of society, basically, like just
Yeah.
being able to like do basic tasks
Yeah.
consistently, despite my energy level. And keto did that for me a lot. I lost a lot of water weight in the beginning. I think right now, so far, I've lost about 30 pounds. I've been on keto for about 2 months now, and that's without working out. That's without doing anything else involved. Um, and yeah, I mean, so far it's been great. I so here's one example. When it comes to YouTube specifically, I've never once went a whole month of uploading just because my energy has always been so inconsistent since I started the channel. And now, you know, this past, you know, couple months, I've been able to upload very consistently on the channel with no problem. So that's kind of an example of like my consistency, my energy is so strong that I'm able to actually work, like I said, just, you know, daily on the channel, which I haven't been able to do since I was 17, which is
That,
absolutely remarkable.
that's amazing. So how long has that been that it's been difficult to not work in it? Difficult to work in it?
Since I got bipolar,
Yeah.
17,
Okay. So, wow.
16, 17. Yeah.
And sorry, how old are you now?
I'm 21.
21. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
And did you notice like a mood shift in the first few days, or like when did you feel like something was different?
Yeah, I mean, so usually, you know, being bipolar too, obviously, y'all know that like your downswings are a lot longer and more frequent than your highs. And even with my current medication regimens, my lows would still last from beginning to end for about 3 days, from like plateau to finish. Um, and with keto, it was like, I want to say like 10 times less, as it was like
Wow.
10% of what my negatives are
Wow.
with medication only.
Crazy.
And it usually only lasts, I want to say, like 6 hours. Like
Blaze, have you
from when I wake up and go to bed, like if I have something in between, it's gone before I go to bed, which
have you
is
found
awesome.
it challenging to adhere to the diet? Because that was just something a lot of people are concerned about, is just sticking with it in the face of all these carbs.
It I guess it can. You know, I live in a household of other people. So, you know, I'm surrounded by Cokes, I'm surrounded by chocolates, you know, Debbie cakes, sandwich, like, you know, bread. Um, for me, I guess I kind of had a little bit of advantage because I'm doing a study for Stanford. So for me, it was more like I'm doing this, it's bigger than myself, and I'm doing this for other people. But even more than that, it was just, it's a mindset of like, if I have to stick to this for the rest of my life, I'm fine with it. Like if as long as it gets me out of this place, even if it made me 10% better, I'm willing to sacrifice all of these other things, because if I'm better off by doing this diet for the rest of my life, then those other things I was eating wasn't good for me in the first place. Like as far as like my mind and my body, those things are bringing me down. So it's more of a matter of fact, like if I do this and it works, then knowingly, why would I go back and, you know, go back to, you know, doing these things, you know what I'm saying, or eating this diet. So it's for me personally, it's more of a fact that like I believe there's a better way to treat myself and go about this more than just medication and therapy. I believe that there's more I could be doing. And, you know, just a ketogenic diet is just another factor in, you know, my treatment plan for myself. And it was just a matter of fact, like going back to where even with medication, even with therapy, I would still, I personally, I would still have to be on disability, because even with medication, even with therapy, my energy was still too unstable to where anytime I got into a low, I would be out for 2 days before I could even do anything. And with keto, I'm able to do that on a daily basis. And I'm actually able to be a functioning member of society despite the condition. And that's just a borderline red line for me.
That's so awesome, man. Like it's like I totally find the same. Like the depression, like one thing we talked about before in this show is like it's like an energy problem. It's not just it's not just you feel bad, or like it's really like your whole body like becomes drained of energy for like a period of time. And people don't understand that. It's like you've really, it's physically hard to do things like to move, to like go outside, to like run. Like some people, they cannot leave their bed or brush their teeth because it's the lack of energy is so severe. And keto like is providing this alternative kind of energy and ketones to the brain as opposed to like glucose. So one thing it can have an effect on as well is like if you're addicted to glucose and sugary foods and stuff. Did you find it had an effect also on the diet side? You mentioned something in your Reddit post about like how it also affected the binge eating thing you had.
Yeah, I mean, you know, binge eating's always been a big problem for me ever since I was like, you know, 8, 9 years old. I remember I was living in the Philippines with my father, and he ended up getting this fridge that had a lock on it because it was getting that bad. And it got to the point where I was on YouTube looking up how to lock pick the lock on a fridge to get into the fridge to get food. And, you know, that's been there since I was a kid, you know? So I find myself now to where with keto, I've actually been able to save money to go towards other things except for just food. It was always bills, food, bills, food. That's it. All my money, all my savings was going towards that specific thing, and it's made it extremely difficult. Um, and since going on a ketogenic diet, my urges have dissipated. You know, if it, like whenever I'm eating, if I try to eat a certain, I feel full like pretty quickly. My it's like my body is able to now tell when I've eaten enough food. Whereas with the binge eating disorder, I could eat food that's made for a whole family of like 5 people, and it would still take 2 hours before I felt full, and I would take a nap for like an hour or two, and go straight back to eating. Um, so that's just kind of like what's done to me in that aspect as well, and also with anti-inflammation as well. My visual snow syndrome, I believe personally for me, I also think it's but personally for me, I believe it's dictated by inflammation in my body, because when I'm on keto, my visual snow syndrome actually slightly decreased.
Oh, cool.
Which is a great thing as well. So that's another positive for me personally.
It's amazing. Like it's such a kind of under-recognized thing about bipolar that it is this like diet is so heavily related to it. And I always, because I had that thing as well with food, like I would eat so much. We had a sweet shop down the road from us where I lived, and I would go to that van, and man, I would raid that place. Like I would come back with like every single, like I would come back with a box of like Haribo things, and no amount of sugar could be enough. And I thought like this, I never really understood it could be related to my moods. And something actually, it was Chris Palmer, the doctor from Harvard, that said this. He was like, I think he said in a podcast, like if you can't get glucose into your cells to use them, one way of trying to override that is just to have tons of glucose, like, just to ram in as much like sweets and things as you can, because it kind of forces the body to use insulin to uptake it into the cells. And I do wonder with bipolar, like how much of the eating thing is related, where it's like our brains are just starved of the fuel they need. And so the body's just like constant, like we're running out of fuel, like we need fuel, and that's depression. And then it forces you to eat, but you never get enough energy because the brain's not using glucose in the normal way potentially. So these are the kind of questions that we're really interested in of how this works. So I guess going from like when I first saw your post, like you've seen someone like he's like totally motivated, and it was different to like a normal post. It was like you were like looking into research studies. You were like, there just seems like and this was maybe like what, like 6 months ago. This you were
Yes,
saying like
6 months.
it seems like there's no hope for the condition. Like has doing keto changed how you feel about like having bipolar and the future of it, and like do you feel more hopeful, or like how has it changed how you feel about being bipolar?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely more hopeful about it, just because like the way I was before with no medication and no keto, no fair. I was on various stuff, but no medication, no keto. Um, for lack of a better term, it was like the reason why I was so hungry for answers is because like if it's gonna be like this for the rest of my life, I'm not gonna be able to handle this. Like it's something that I'm not gonna be able to deal with, and I'm like, if this is it, I don't want to be here. That was kind of like my whole mentality. I was like, there's got to be something. Um, so yeah, I mean, keto basically has the fact that keto works so well, especially with myself, especially, is that it brings up a whole new discussion and opens up a whole new side of research that I think that it is being studied, but I feel like as the years go on, it will probably be studied more and more as to how certain foods affect certain people. And I'm not a scientist, I'm not a researcher, I haven't studied it all, but maybe like the way that we eat control like dictates our energy more than what we realize.
Yeah.
And
It's
maybe
so
it's not
funny.
the same for everybody. Maybe it's the fact that everybody has a specific diet that is catered to themselves that may just be down to genetics.
Mm.
It's funny that for whatever reason we haven't explored this avenue, which seems so self-explanatory that the food you eat should have an impact on your mood. Then for some reason they don't teach this at med school. And so working with Ian and doing this podcast and talking about this and working with Dr. Palmer and other people, I'm so excited that we're finally starting to form some fledgling group of interest into um, what this can do and the effect it can have. And people are starting to fund research into this. And I suspect that, and based on my experience with keto, having had consistent manic episodes of hypomania and then having it virtually disappear as I have bipolar 1, I'm optimistic that this diet could be far more impactful even than I originally thought, and even than a lot of medications. So Blaze, I guess my next question for you is, the last few weeks have been like the equinox, the fall equinox, when the days are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And I notice I've talked to a lot of people who start to get like more depressed during this time period just because of the days and the time of year. Have you noticed anything like that, or have you been like on keto, just kind of coasting right through it?
My bipolar isn't necessarily dictated by the seasons. Just from a real life, I'm a very indoor like obviously what I do for a living, it's always very indoor based. So over the years, I haven't noticed that my moods and stuff like that is really dictated by the seasons. So yeah, I mean that's basically it. I mean, like, I haven't noticed the difference, to tell you the truth. Just every like 3 or 4 days, I'll have a down episode of like 6 to 7 hours, and then that's really it for my mood swings. And also, a great thing about keto as well is that not only is it very effective, but it's also very easy to follow for people that don't have much money. So like people in third world country, I mean, I'm not really, I don't want to go that far, but just as far as on a budget, it's a lot easier to follow than other treatments that have been established for bipolar, which I think is great. And not only that, but also opens an avenue to where if one of the biggest issues of bipolar treatment is testing medications. And in my opinion, I think keto can be like one of those first line things that could potentially make someone better or improve their mood automatically while they are testing medications that could kind of ease that process compared to just going through havoc, for a couple years while we're testing out combos. And I believe that's pretty major.
Yeah. There's times in in science where, like the conversation we're having about like the first results of keto and seeing it for the first time. um there's been times in science where people like survive a condition for some like kind of like random, almost like random reason, or like something they didn't expect or something that they couldn't have predicted. And I was just thinking, like, when you're talking there, it's funny, like the three of us have all had this experience with keto and bipolar, but we're one of like a really small group of people that's starting to notice this. And we're only starting to like understand that this could be like influential for treating bipolar. But you were saying about like, you consider this should be like a frontline treatment for bipolar. Like at the moment, it's just like the three of us on YouTube talking about this, like almost anecdotally, and thankfully these studies are happening. But it's so early days. Like how do you feel like compared to going through medication and trying lots of things? And we obviously advocate for medication completely, and it should be done with keto. But how did you find, like, how would you rate keto compared to medications, keeping in mind that we're always recommending you should be on medications while
For
staying
sure.
keto?
So I can actually have a good comparison for this because a month into the ketogenic study, a month into keto, I actually ended up eating something from the grocery store. They're like store brand oven baked wings, and I didn't know at the time, but I'm reading the label. I see 0 sugar, 0 carb, or like 1 carb, like 4 wings. Okay, cool, keto friendly. End up buying it and eating it and buying a crap ton, and then I just started feeling very different to where I was live streaming and I ended up having like a hypomanic episode. I noticed because I'll start talking like extremely fast. I'm already a fast talker naturally, but I'll start talking like increasingly fast to where it sounds like I'm like rapping or something like that. It's very rapid. And I was like, wow, okay, so I'm in a hypomanic episode. And then 24 hours later, I'm like, boom, I'm in a depressive episode. It's like way worse than anything I've experienced. So then like a day or two later, I was like, let me just check my ketones. So then I have this little ketone blood testing kit. It's very similar to like that diabetics use. Test my blood, and then boom, I was at 0.2 ketone. I was at ketosis.
Yeah.
And just the fact that I was able to notice how much different I felt energy-wise and mood-wise, and it was linked to the ketosis, meant the world to me. Now, that brings me to my next point about comparing it to medications, personally for me. It's just like therapy is like 5 to 10% for me. Medications are probably like 5 to 10% for me. And then keto is like 80% for me.
Whoa.
I think it's a lot more for me going back to my binge eating disorder. I've had that for the longest, more than any other condition I have. And the fact that keto is able to address that and fix that, along with my energy, along with my mood. Like I said earlier, even with medication, my depressive moods are still immobilizing. I won't really get intrusive thoughts like that, but I'm still not able to move. I'm not still able to function. And with keto, it took that, made it a lot less severe. Like I said, probably like 10% of what it is on medication. And like I said, brought back that 3-day to 4-day depression into 6 to 7 hours. And it's a lot less worse. So I think it also, I think for me, it's a more biased case because of my binge eating disorder. It kind of just, I think that with that being taken into account, it kind of leans towards maybe my diet being more important than other things. But yeah, I mean, medication, it brought my episodes from like, a week to like, 10 days, and then split that in half. But then keto took that and just did that by 10% and like 10%, so it's a very substantial difference for me.
I got shivers when you said that, because to hear a bipolar person saying that something made an 80% difference, like it just never happens. Like there's almost nothing you can look at like that does that for people with bipolar. And I felt that shift. Like I remember it so clearly, like sitting on the bus and like feeling kind of normal for the first time and feeling like what is this? Like I never felt like stable like that before. So it went from about 6 months ago, we spoke on Reddit, and you were like really like I almost like in the last kind of like, you were really like at the end of.
I was ready to go.
Yeah,
I was ready to go for like
I,
that
I-
term.
do you mind me relaying like something that you wrote, or would you prefer I mean, from your post, you were sort of saying like you were really like serious that this is like, the end for you, basically. Like you tried everything, and you know you basically, the impression I got was that this was like an emergency and someone needs to like get in touch with this guy and like say, here's some options that you might, if there's nothing else, like at least please try like these other things that are possible. And so yeah, I've seen that a lot on Reddit. Like there's people who just, they've tried every possible medication and every possible thing, and they just don't know where to turn. And so I'm just like constantly trying to suggest the idea that keto is an option. Like it's not necessarily going to work for them, but it is an option. And now like 6 months later, we're on a Zoom call and you've like restarted working like on your YouTube channel. You feel like, wait, you're like,
Yeah, I mean, I'm laughing. I'm able to feel emotions a lot better.
Yeah.
I'm someone where in the past, just naturally, I've never been a big crier. I could watch it like the saddest movie in the world, and I would not be able to like actually like cry. But then I was watching I was watching Squid Games the other day, and I was able to like feel that emotion, and I was actually able to produce. But I felt the sadness. I felt a certain emotion that I've been able to feel in a long time. And it's hard to describe until you kind of feel it for yourself. But as far as how down I was like 6 months ago, I went as far as to where I wrote a suicide note on my social medias. And I put my Snapchat, my Twitter, I put it out there. And that's just, as far as how deep I was, I was about as far as you could get. At the time, I was living in an apartment, and we were on the 23rd floor. And, every day when we got the elevator, they have a balcony where you can see all the way down, and it'd be just constant thoughts just going like that constantly. And it's ironic because during that time, if I get emotional, my first instinct was to eat more. So I would feel like that. And I was in Colombia, so obviously, my money goes crazy when it comes to like, what I can buy as food wise in Colombia. And I'll end up, getting 3 like super large pizzas and just eating the hell out of it. And it was just this constant cycle where I was binge eating a crap ton, and then boom, like just that deep depression. It was linked.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, 6 months later, it's a massive, massive difference for me. And also, one thing I want to say too, I'm a competitive gamer. So I do play video games competitively, esports and stuff like that. And as far as like, even with keto, my competitive play has even improved through keto.
Wow.
So as far as like, proof being there, my play has also improved through keto. I think that goes back to the energy and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. Like, I mean, I just have to give credit to like the whole the scientists at Stanford that are doing this trial, because I did nothing. I just sent you this message, and they've carried out this thing. And it has to be said, like, it's really forward thinking what they're doing in doing these trials so early on, when there's very few people looking into this. It's something that is, to me, it feels like if this really is having this effect, which it certainly has for us, and it looks like for many other people, it feels like a right to be able to access this kind of treatment. Like it feels like it should be possible to do this. And so I can only have respect for people like that are doing this so early on. And Chris Palmer at Harvard has been doing this for 15 years in his private practice, and people were probably calling him all sorts of things for doing this. And like a diet to treat a major psychiatric condition is so wacky to people. And we're really fortunate that in Edinburgh, we have a Danny Smith psychiatrist, and my father, who supported this because my dad went through all these depressions with me when I was growing up, and saw like how close to the edge I was so many times. Like I can completely relate to what you're saying about like being up on high floors, and all these things were like just part of our life. And then I switched in the course of like 2 months to being like a normal functioning human that's like working in the world. And like he was like, what on earth has happened here? And he happens to be a doctor, and so we started researching this, and we're really fortunate to find a psychiatrist, Danny Smith, who was open to these ideas and who was extremely supportive of us like looking into this. And then that's how I got linked up with Matt, and Matt's family is like supporting this research and making it all happen and driving this thing forward. So we're really hopeful that like maybe other people can like access this kind of therapy in the future. Maybe it's going to be more hopeful for people like you who were posting 6 months ago that you were like at the end, and then now you're like back and working and enjoying life, and like it's just incredible. So I really hope with this podcast we can keep telling these stories, which are some of the first stories in the world to ever talk about this. Like these are the first stories that have been told about people surviving bipolar with this kind of metabolic approach. So thanks so much for like sharing everything with us about this. We really appreciate it. And Matt, did you want to ask more about the diet and like
well, I have fun questions of my own, like what are your favorite foods to eat, some of the meals you cook, keto, things like that.
I'm not gonna lie, I am not a big cooker at all. One of the biggest things that I like so much about that thing that accidentally brought my ketosis were like these oven baked wings that I could put in a microwave for 5 minutes and then boom, they're ready to go. So actually, one of my concerns being a bigger guy is having loose skin. So that being combined with like I was doing some more research, and apparently extended fast help a lot when it comes to loose skin. So I've been doing 24-hour fast. I'll cook for like 30 minutes, and then I'll have like a big platter of food. Then I'll always eat that in one sitting. So I'll have like cheese sticks, eggs, turkey bacon, because oh my bacon, bro, bacon in the US. I went to 3 grocery stores, and every single bacon package that was not turkey bacon had sugar added into it. I could not find it. I had to go to a butcher shop like 30 minutes down the road. I live in a small country town, so obviously I have availability to like I had to go to an actual butcher shop to get like bacon that doesn't have sugar added into it. And it was absolutely insane. So yeah, so you're going keto, watch out for bacon, especially if in the US, has a lot of sugar added into it. And yeah, I mean, eggs, bacon, salmon. I've really been liking fish. I'm a big seafood guy. And then you can soak it in coconut oil, mayo on top. It goes so well with the keto diet. And then also, what else am I trying to think of? Oh yeah, like spinach and that sort of thing. Gotta get your greens in there. Cauliflower, fiber is important for this diet as well. And then half of an avocado. That's kind of what my day. I'm a very basic eater. I can eat the same, especially based on this diet. I can eat the same thing, for a whole week every day. I'm a very basic eater. And if sometimes I want to cheat, I'll go to like, it's not good, but I still do anyway. I'll go to Wendy's and get like a fast food burger, but like keto friendly, and I'll do like that sometimes. As far as my favorite dish on keto is by far salmon, fish. I love it. And you can taste the difference. Like, seafood, for some reason, when you're on keto, it tastes different. I don't know what is about it. You can taste like your cravings change, and you can feel those cravings when you're eating the right things. So if you're on keto, you kind of let those cravings kind of like just dictate like your body would tell. When you're in ketosis, your body would tell like what you need more, then you can kind of dictate your diet based on those urges.
It's crazy, man. When you can't trust bacon not to have sugar in it, it's like, what kind of a world is this? Like, that's like the
Bro,
most.
it's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy, and it's just like, it's like you have to be careful, because there's a lot of little tricks out there, man. Like, especially in the U.S. as well, it kind of just shows like how much sugar is like in everything that we eat. Like, for example, like that oven baked wings that I had like while growing up. If my dad wanted us to have like a healthy meal, because he's like me, we don't like to cook. We're not cookers, so we just go get that package, throw it in, and it turns out like it's very misleading. And it's like the nutrition label definitely has to be, because the nutrition level that's based off of is so misleading. They look at the ingredients and you see sugar added into that sort of thing. And I'm not really mad about that, but it's the fact that I had to go to 4 different locations, 3 grocery stores, 1 butcher shop, to find a bacon source that I could eat on keto.
Man.
Which is a protein. It's a protein. I'm not looking for Reese's. I'm not looking for Hershey's. I'm not looking for sugary. It's a meat.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a cut of meat. And that just irritated the hell out of me, bro.
Totally.
And it was the same thing with the chicken wings. Me and in the study, we have a keto coach that's been on keto for 20 plus years. And she's a nutritionist and kind of is there for us. And we're going through my diet, and it took us 5 days to figure it out, because chicken wings was the last thing that we were thinking about. That should be the last thing. That's the last thing we're looking at. We're looking at I have 1 diet soda per day or something like that kind of help my soda urges. So we took that out. We decreased my protein. The whole entire time it was wings, which is crazy.
That's amazing. It's almost like we've got this biology, this genes are designed for hunter-gatherer times, when we're out fishing and hunting animals and stuff, and we've just put sugar into everything, and it's our whole system is what the heck is this? This, you can't just take this one little substance out of a plant and then just put it in everything. It's it doesn't make any sense to our biology. It doesn't fit with our system. It's almost like you're trying to upgrade your software, and the hardware isn't ready for it. It's and we just, so when you have this constant stream of sugar, and especially in America, I used to go out for work, and I couldn't believe how sweet the sodas were compared to the UK. They're honestly a third again as sweet as they are in the UK, if not more. And it's the body's just not capable of dealing with this level of sugar. So people always knew that this affects the body, but they never really for some reason, everyone just felt like it stops here. It's oh, it affects the body and you get diabetes and all these things. But why on earth would it not affect the brain as well? And it's just lots of misunderstandings that happened with people. They felt like the brain doesn't use insulin and it works in a different way, and all this kind of stuff that we're now realizing is wrong. The brain is just as dependent on glucose and uses insulin in a slightly different way, but it still uses insulin just like the rest of the body. So it would make sense that this has an effect on the brain, and that people end up with different symptoms from that. One of them being, potentially bipolar, which is, I can relate to the struggle with finding meat. I've actually started going to a local farm, and my wife jokes that I've turned into a hunter-gatherer, because I come home with this on Saturdays I go and I come back with my package of meat. If it feels like a really good hunter-gatherer type impulse, you go out and gather your meat for the week and store it in the freezer. So I've got into that. But yeah, it was difficult for me as well to find stuff that didn't have additives or sugar in it. It's really tricky.
Yeah, and it's obviously it feels like a necessity to where you kind of have to do that to guarantee that there's nothing added in your food that's gonna throw you off. Because for me, that tiny bit of sugar that was on those wings just threw me off. And going back and looking at it, the wings actually brought back my binge eating, because I started eating a lot more and more and more and more. I was eating 40 wings a day, of those packages. And it was just it would make sense. My body was oh yeah, there's sugar in this, and it's obviously it doesn't know how to handle it. And just that's that little bit of sugar just completely threw me off. So it shows a lot when it comes to it. And then one thing too, I've traveled a lot to like many different countries, and in places like Colombia and the Philippines and like just places like that, like you can taste the food quality difference compared to like the US and like first world countries, where honestly their food quality is supposed to be better. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's so misleading. So if you're on keto, that's like one of the biggest things you gotta be careful for, is like that sort of thing.
Yeah. I know that like if it's not uncommon for people to experience that in epilepsy as well. Like, you know, they use keto for epilepsy, like it's seizure reduction and stuff. Have you come across this?
Yeah, I have, and it's actually funny. It's kind of it kind of relates a little bit, because a lot of bipolar medications are also used for
Yeah.
epilepsy. And one of the medications I have in my treatment regimen is actually an epilepsy medication.
Well, what I was going to say is that with epilepsy, it's the same thing. Like if they go back to eating sugar, they can have seizures immediately. Like they come back on very quickly, and it's like a very quick effect. Like they can be completely seizure free, and then they have one cheat meal, and the seizures come back again. And so there's something happening in the brain that's like very dramatic. Like, do you know what I mean? For that to change so quickly, like for you to be seizure free to like eating a candy bar and then having a seizure, like what the heck? You know, like there's something really fundamental shifting in the brain. And similarly, I don't know if you noticed like this yourself, but a lot of people have this adaptation into keto where they get better over like 2 or 3 days, and then on the sort of second or third day, they're like, oh, now I feel like I'm in keto. Did you have that as well? Like for me, if I'm out of keto, I was like depressed, and then 2 to 3 days later, I would be like back to normal mood again. But there'd be like a transition where the ketone levels are coming up and the glucose is coming down. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, it was like an instant cycle.
Yeah.
I knew immediately I was out of keto because I went straight into a hypomanic episode, then straight into a depressed episode where I couldn't move. It got so bad to where I have my bed over here. I had to end stream, and I just lay down for like, I want to say like 6 hours, and I felt like crap the whole entire day. And then yeah, I mean, like I guess like I was like that for like a week, because we couldn't figure out what I was eating that was, affecting me like this. Then once we figured it out, it took me about 3 to 4 days to go back into ketosis. So yeah, that timeline definitely lines up, but you definitely feel a difference for sure.
It's kind of unrealistic to think that after hundreds of thousands of years of relying on a specific food source, which is fat, specifically animal fat, that we could switch and in 10,000 years of agriculture develop adaptations that would allow us to function normally on carbohydrates. It's a ridiculous premise, actually, if you think through it. So especially now that, like, a lot of people, it's not just carbs, like, low glycemic carbs they're eating sugars and all these different things. So my own experience was that after months of being on a strict ketogenic diet, I actually was able to get a little bit more lenient. So my ketones were at about 2.5 most of the time in the evening for the first few months. And then I was able to dial it back and have like different things that maybe had a few more carbs or eat a little more protein in my diet. Even after 6 to 8 months of eating keto, if my ketones are at like 0.7, 0.8, I still do pretty well. So do you religiously test your ketone levels, for example, in the evening and see where they're at? And is there a specific number you shoot for where you're like, if I'm in this such and such range, then I can be confident my mood is going to be stable?
It hasn't been long enough for me to know my range yet. It's only been 2 months. But as long as it's like 0.6 or above, I definitely feel the difference. Once I go to like 0.4, 0.5, then that's kind of like the gray line territory where I'm like, okay, something's wrong. And at 0.3, it's like I'm back to like off keto, basically. And as far as like how often I'll test, obviously if I'm at a keto, I'll be testing every couple of days, every day. Sometimes if it gets too bad from just like that month or just like that week where I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. But I mean, I have to test my ketones weekly for the study for measurements. But if I wasn't in the study, it would probably be like every 2 to 3 weeks, And once I start feeling a difference, then yeah, I'll probably test more. But as far as like how I would normally do it, probably 2 3 weeks. I'll probably sit on my computer and be like, oh, I got nothing to do. Okay, I haven't checked my blood test in a while, so I'm gonna check my blood. Like, that type of thing, right? But yeah, I mean,
it's like they see exactly the same stuff in epilepsy you're talking about, because obviously for 100 years they've been using this for seizures. And so it's just funny, like it's worth reading. I can send you some studies if you like, but like it's amazing reading this stuff and being like, oh, they go through all the same stuff, like all the adaptation periods, all the the BS about sugar and everything like that you can eat in the world. All that stuff has been gone through by people with epilepsy. So I find it really helpful reading their stories. And one of the things they often talk about, especially in studies, is like having your ketones high and your glucose low. So they call it like the glucose ketone index. And they like a lot of some of the reviews say, recommend aiming like ketones over 2, glucose under like I think 5. Yeah, I'd have to check those figures, but it's like, they see the glucose coming down as being also important as the ketones coming up. So I think it's something that would be great to understand more about, because I definitely know I did a experiment where I tracked my ketones and glucose for a year. It's literally like the worst year ever to have a meal with me, because I was like measuring every single day, and I was wearing a CGM, like continuous glucose monitor, and I saw that I could see that as my glucose was up, even if my ketones were high, the brain can't use them. Like if your glucose is up and your ketones are up, the brain won't uptake the ketones, it will uptake the glucose sometimes. And so I think that's why it's important to also try and, at least for me, to control glucose. And we need to study that to figure out, if this could be helpful for other folk as well. But yeah, like all this stuff is definitely in epilepsy, and we're treated by the same medications they use in epilepsy. So you can see the argument for using keto for bipolar. But if you go to any psychiatrist in the UK at the moment, nobody will prescribe it. Like I have a friend, I've been talking to some of like the bipolar charity groups around Scotland, just like introducing the idea of keto being a possible thing to be interested in. I spoke to a guy last week who was basically saying that his wife is like incredibly unwell. Like she'll do anything, like she'll try any therapy, like she's tried like numerous different medications, and her psychiatrist won't allow her to do ketogenic diet because he thinks it'll, and I totally understand that and respect it. But it's so frustrating as well, because you're like, man, this has been used for a very long time in epilepsy. These are safe. This is a safe diet for most people to try, and it could have a massive effect. So I really hope it'll change where like people, yeah.
What I've noticed in the healthcare field is that it's a lot of like a copycat mentality. Like if someone's peers isn't doing this treatment plan, then they won't do it themselves. And what really confuses me is something as simple as a diet change, isn't, especially a good diet, isn't really dangerous at all for people. But it's just the fact that, like, I feel like, especially when it comes to healthcare professionals, I feel like if their peers are not doing it themselves, then they're not going to be the ones to make that first step. And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. And it's like, something that I just don't understand is that I don't know how it is for healthcare professionals, but from like being on like bipolar discords, seeing how people experience certain things, looking at, Reddit and seeing the frustrations of several people. And it's just like, as far from like a satisfaction standpoint, if you're someone that's a healthcare professional passionate about mental health, and you look at the current treatment that's available, it's very hard for me to believe that they're satisfied with the treatment that people like. If I'm looking at the current treatments and how people's mentality is, I'm hungry for more. Like there's gotta be something else involved. I'm like during my off time, I'm looking up and I'm trying to see like what's going on, what new things can I try and recommend for people to do, and something as non-dangerous as a keto diet. But then they're willing to induce seizures for a couple seconds in somebody for treatment and for treatment resistant depression. But then they're not willing to recommend somebody to go in ketosis, which is not dangerous at all.
Yeah.
Like worst case scenario, it doesn't really do anything for you, but best case scenario, it could completely transform your life. In my circumstance, I went from a very suicidal mindset to now I'm actually able to like be very, very well functioning. It's frustrating. And it's very confusing in that regard.
There's another thing that's annoying, which is that, like, I've been on this diet since early January of this year, so 9 months and 9 or 10 months, and like I'll be eating my regular meals, which will be like a lot of the time salmon, fatty fish, fatty meats, avocado, eggs, things like that, cheese. People will look at my meals and they'll be like, no, Matt, what are you eating? Like, why are you eating this fad diet? When I say, well, I'm eating it, I'm pretty honest and like upfront. I say I'm for my mental health. I'm eating this diet, ketogenic diet. And people are very skeptical, and people think it's like a fad diet that I'm eating and that this is some weird thing. People ask me if I'm trying to lose weight very frequently, which I'm not. This is just purely for my mental health. And generally a lot of the reception I get, this is kind of hard for me. I think a lot of people can relate to this, is like people think it's very weird and that it's some fad diet. But I look at the standard American diet, the SAD, or the Western diet for that matter, the high carbohydrate, refined sugars. And this is like far weirder what you're eating, man. Like you're drinking a Coke and having a burger with bread, and you're telling me my diet is weird. I mean, it's very hard for me. So I really
that goes back to education, I believe, because, one of the first things they teach you in the U.S. when you go through elementary school, like grade 1, grade 2, kindergarten, one of the first things you learn is, the eat the nutrition index. I don't know what the name is, but like, learn that like, I think half is supposed to be carbs, like 25 veggies and 25 protein. And that's kind of just like what you are brought up upon. But now it's just like, with that being in the education system, it's very hard for people to believe anything else other than that system.
It's funny, like you say, like it's an odd diet eating keto, because like for your genes and your biology is really odd. Like having the entire agricultural industry premising like your diet. Do you know what I mean? Like you literally need this entire system of farming, whereas like living in a natural environment, you'd be able to be on keto very easily. Like animals have a lot of fat on them before they're removed in the supermarket. Like that was just a huge part of our eating. It's way more bizarre. It's like what we eat now is so bizarre that our biology just doesn't even recognize it. So it is funny, like what we grew up with thinking was normal. Like we have this thing in the UK called the NHS Eat Well plate, which is 1/3 like carbs, and usually like those being like bread and pasta and things like this. So it is just like weird what we think is normal, and like I kind of almost like it feels almost a bit you know, uh, like you're waking up from the Matrix when you figure out, that this kind of food was bad for you, because it's like it was just, I didn't even know it was a thing. Like I was like, I didn't even think food was a matter to my mental health at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never have thought that like changing my diet could do anything. So it was very bizarre to like find that out for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Ian, we used to have the food pyramid in the United States, where the base of the pyramid was healthy grains. I mean, when I woke up and I started learning about this, I couldn't believe this. I mean, they've updated this since then, but when I was growing up, this is what they taught us. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Same here.
Is mad. Like I would swap you the pyramid. The pyramid sounds like at least it's not like this 1/3, but both of them are just equally like so far from like what our biology is like trying to survive off. And so like you say, it's like totally. I think that was a really great point. Is it's the agricultural revolution that caused this. Like we went through this huge shift in our like environment, and our biology didn't just suddenly evolve to catch up with it. Like we were pushed into this new environment, and and we're running on like Windows 7 point whatever, Windows 95, and we're in an era of like, Half-Life. It's just not going to work. So I think that's the key thing is how do we then like get back to that kind of diet that we were on before, and how do we adapt and use like science and medicines to try and bring our body into this modern age. But yeah, I just couldn't believe like how I'd eaten for so long. And even I have a like young daughter, and like I'm so careful now with like refined carbs. When I was a kid, and I used to eat sweets every single day. I'd be going having cakes, cheesecake. It was just part of normal life. You have dessert after lunch and after dinner.
Mm. And something I want to kind of change topic. So you brought up your daughter, right? And something substantial that keto has done for me is that someone with bipolar 2 possibly having children and potentially spreading bipolar to them was something for myself that I was very cautious about. I'm still young, but of course, at some point having a family is something that I've always wanted. But once I found out bipolar 2 and genetics and how they can spread down to my kids, that was something where I was very cautious about, specifically because of how how today's treatment plans were with medication and therapy, and how ineffective it can be sometimes. But what keto has done for me is that it's possible to it showed me that it's possible to be a very functioning member of society with keto, and kind of gives me hope to where, like, if I have a kid and on a very small off chance if they end up having having bipolar, it makes me hopeful that we are on the right track in regards to treatment plans that can cater better than what we are doing today in the mainstream treatment of bipolar. And that kind of turned new leaf for me to where, like, now I don't have that wall to like have a kid. And that's something for me where I'm always very careful about like what types of things I do, specifically when it comes to kids, obviously. But just that alone just turned new leaf to me where, like, now I'm okay with having a child. And I think that's a very, very big step for me in that regard.
It's amazing. That is
Awesome.
amazing.
Yeah.
Man, that's incredible. Like it's amazing what bacon can do. Like from not because I felt I totally felt the same. Like I was worried about having a kid. Like so unfortunately my uncle, we lost him to suicide, and mental health runs in my mother's line of my family, and bipolar seems to run in the kind of maternal line. And it was like a tragedy in our family. And my dad like was being a bipolar kid myself, like I can see what you put your parents through, like going I just like I can't believe how much he stuck with me for it. It's like unbelievable the lengths he went to help me survive my teenage years and university. Just like every year, like terrible like depressions, and so just having someone that I saw like went through that and was willing to commit to going through that with me. I was like, if I have my daughter and she has it, I'm just going to be that person for her, and I'm going to be there for her. But also, I'm going to research the living shit out of everything I can find out about this, and do science to try and make so when she's grown up, like we're going to have better treatment. So that's just become my whole life now. Is like I want to make sure, like hopefully she won't have it, but if she does, I want her to grow up in a world where there's so many options and so many different ways she can manage it. But yeah, it's scary, man. It's like it does go in the genes, and so it's
Yeah,
something
I
to
mean, and
yeah.
this is something that can really transform, a lot of lives, specifically when it comes to kids. Um, you know, having to test medications and then go to school at the same time when you don't know how it's going to affect you or how you're going to feel. I can only imagine how that's like for a kid. And if keto can be like a first line thing that a child can try, whether it's like borderline, bipolar, epilepsy, whatever. And if it works great for them, I feel like that could be a very, life-changing thing for them, I don't want to look at statistics, but I'm sure, there's a lot of lives that could actually be saved from, from keto being I'm pretty positive or hopeful that's going to happen, but I'm pretty sure as the years go on and it's more researched, I definitely feel like bipolar or keto for bipolar could definitely be a first line thing that people could try. I mean, even now, I'm in a small country town, but the nurse practitioner I'm with, I even have him now recommending it for other bipolar patients to try keto and see how it does for them based off how it's done for me.
Wow.
And I think that one case at a time around the world can definitely change a lot of medical professionals' outlook on keto and recommending for people. It may have to take a few courageous people where, despite what their medical professional says, they still try keto regardless. And if it works great for them, then they can very potentially change the outlook of their healthcare professional. And slowly but surely, it'll start to spread and spread and spread more throughout the world. And it can honestly save a lot of lives. It saved mine. I would not be here today if it wasn't for keto. And I say that with full confidence. At some point or another, the way that my medication, despite medication, if it wasn't for keto, in a year or so, I would not be here.
Man.
And I believe that wholeheartedly.
That's
I would
amazing.
not be here.
Man, I'm just so glad that this has worked for you. Like, it just like I wish you could have seen when I read. I was like, oh, I wonder how he's doing. It was like because we hadn't spoken in a while, and then I saw your post on Reddit, and I was literally like, that bit on the Matrix when like everyone's okay, and he's like, yes, that was me for like I was so pleased because it just doesn't happen to people. Nobody gets better from bipolar. Like it's like you get treated and you manage it for your life. And I'm not saying obviously it's cured like for by any means. Like this is just something that's helped a lot. But yeah, when I read like how things were feeling better for you, I was like, man, this is exactly what I hope everyone can access is this chance to have this, because there's so many people out there who probably, well, we don't know, but like we hope that they would respond in the same way. And at the moment they're like going about their life not knowing about it. Like they could be improving on this or at least having a chance of it, and they just don't know. So this is why we're doing this podcast, to just share like these stories for the first time and try and help people see that it might be something worth talking to their psychiatrist about.
That's what I was going to mention. It's so important that, I mean, there are people out there who are suffering with bipolar who want to get better, who are willing to do whatever it takes to get better and go to any lengths, but just don't know. Like this is just such niche knowledge that people just have no idea. People think it's all meds and it's therapy and maybe exercise, sleep, and there are a few other things they can do. It's such a transformative step and a treatment. At least it has been for me. I can only speak for myself. That I'm just hoping we can reach as many people as possible, continue to get the word out. And it's so funny how this is just like we're in the earliest stages of starting to spread the word about this. And obviously, like, I liken this to like heliocentric revolution or, things like that, like major upheavals in different fields that take time. And so I do anticipate it's going to take some time before doctors en masse start to like use this as a treatment and it starts to become widely considered a useful pragmatic treatment. But it is so funny. It's like knowing that the earth revolves around the sun and nobody else does yet, and trying to get the word out, and even facing like some pushback. Like you mentioned, Ian, you had a psychiatrist who was hesitant to prescribe this as a treatment for bipolar just because people don't know about it. But it's fun. It's still fun trying to start something new.
Yeah, it does feel like something is shifting, and like um it's so, and often it comes about like where just people find it randomly. Do you know what I mean? Like so many things in medicine have come about with someone accidentally getting better, or like finding something because they were trying to do something out. Like I was just trying to lose weight. I didn't mean to improve my mental health in that way at all. And so it's just awesome to be able to speak to you about this and to hear that you've improved so much. And it's worth, we did a whole episode with Matt sharing his story, and you'll be amazed like how many similarities there were with like what you were saying. And also like this is like difficult for all, because like nobody wants to be like public about being mentally ill, because there is stigma, like it's still there. And it's like, I just really appreciate that you would be willing to come on the show and talk about this. And we just wish you the absolute best with this. And we have to support your YouTube channel now that you're uploading videos again. Can you give the links and all the different descriptions and
Yeah, I mean, I do gaming content, so if you are into that sort of stuff, I mean,
yeah.
if you look up Blaze NBA 2K on
Yep.
YouTube, you'll see my channel.
Awesome.
Please, I'll post your information in the low bar when I post this to YouTube. I just want to say how grateful I am. And I'm so glad that you're like able to function in society and make your content and game and like do your thing now. And that this is not holding you back as much as it was. Like, it makes me so happy to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, it's truly life changing, man. I'm somewhere naturally. I've been a very open person, so it's not like it's not necessarily like a big for me. Like I've always been told to be an open person, and it's like something that like the rest of my life I'll be getting out there and I'll be telling people about and that sort of thing. So, but yeah,
That's awesome.
there you go.
Matt helped me with that, because we were on a call a while back, like a scientific call about research studies, and like everyone, and like you were just talking openly about being bipolar as if it's like no big thing. And I was like, whoa, dude, like I've never spoken about this open, but it just made me think like, no, it does help people, because like there is some risk, not really, but like there, it does feel uncomfortable, but then like I've felt nothing but like support and people being really cool and helpful, and they can, I've not felt like that stigma that people experienced before. And I just feel like it's worth it. Like if someone found something that made them this much better, like if someone found some magic thing that made them much better from bipolar, I'd be like, please, man, like do everything you can to tell people about it. And so yeah, so thank you for sharing, and it's awesome. And hopefully we can check in again in a few months and see how things are going. And I hope the YouTube channel goes awesome, and like that becomes a real exciting thing in your life.
For sure, man. Thank you for having me. This was awesome. Thank you.